Hello again, it's Tom here and welcome back to Magic Woodworking. So today I want to finish these cabinets. I made these several months ago and one thing and another I never got round to finishing them. Now I need more storage and quite frankly I'd like to tidy it all up. So I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to show you guys how to make shaker style doors and drawer fronts. Now you're probably thinking, well, I've seen this before on other channels. You may have, but generally they use larger machines like table saws, etc. I'm going to show you how to do it with just handheld tools, a handheld circular saw or track saw and a router. That's it. So even someone who's into DIY can actually make a professional looking door without all the big machines. So if that's something you'd like to see, stay right there and let me take you through this. Okay then, so let's get into what I'm actually building here. For those of you uninitiated, this is what a shaker style door looks like. Don't worry about it, I stole it from another project. But it will do for demonstration purposes. So, what makes a shaker style door? Three components: rails, stiles, panel. That's it, it's very basic. Now, the rails and the stiles are generally out of about 18mm material, or in old money 3/4 of an inch, and the panel is normally out of 6.5mm or 1/4 inch in old money. As for the width, generally 90mm down to about 60-65mm is the standard width of the stile and rail, or in old money, what is that, 2 1/4 by about 3.5 inches. Whatever you like the look of for your project is the size you go with. There's no set fast size, it's just whatever you like the look of. It will still work. As for the material, doesn't matter again, can be plywood, MDF, whatever your project is, it will work just the same. This is a birch ply, it's rather expensive, but again, you could use a cheaper one, it doesn't really matter. So, now I've got through all that, the next thing I've got to do is break down this sheet of plywood into usable lengths. Cue the montage. One quick tip, when ripping down lots of plywood or MDF, it's always worth having a couple of pieces of sacrificial timber so you can cut all the way through without damaging your tool or your benches. If you're enjoying this video and you'd like to support me, please give me a thumbs up, or better yet, subscribe down there. It only takes 2 seconds and it really helps the channel. And more so, it makes YouTube show it to more people like yourselves who have never found this channel before. Anyway, enough about me, let's get back on with this video. So, when you got your stiles and your rails all ripped through to the correct width and length, it's now time to put your grooves in them. Now we're going to use the router for this. In it, I've got a 6mm cutter. Only problem is, it isn't quite wide enough for the plywood I'm going to use for the panel, because birch ply isn't quite 1/4 of an inch, it's slightly wider. Not a problem, I'm just going to go through twice just to make the groove that little bit wider. Now, I haven't fitted a dust extractor to it because the cutter is sticking out quite a bit and it will just blow the shavings everywhere, so a dust extractor is absolutely useless for it. I've made up a small jig and all it consists of is 2 pieces of timber. So when I put the stiles or rails in there, it stops them sliding backwards and stops me pushing it across this way when I'm putting the grooves in. Simple as that. So let's put our grooves in and then I'll show you the next step. And as you can see, machining the grooves is really easy. A small bit of forward thought, making a small jig like this can save yourself so much hassle. No slips, no movement, you know exactly what it's going to do. So, The next step is we've got to put the grooves in our rails, and then we're going to machine the tongues to fit into the groove. And I'll show you that right now. So now we've got to cut the tongue on the end of our rails. The way we're going to do that is with the same router, using the same cutter and using the same bearing. You just wind it up a little bit, and that way the depth will be exactly the same as your groove. I'm even using the same jig as I had before, only difference being I've now cut this off to the length of the rail, and the reason for that is as you run the router past the end, it will split out the back of the rail unless you've got that piece of timber there to stop it. So it's very important. But make sure you cut it exactly the same length because the bearing will run along the end. Let me demonstrate. So as you saw, that took seconds. There's our style we machined before. And there you go. Nice flush fit on both sides. No gaps, exactly the right depth. Firm enough it can hold itself in position. It really is as easy as that. Now, let me show you how to cut your panel to fit into the actual door before we make the glue up. So, with cutting your panels, ideally you want the grain to be running vertically. Now, it's just an aesthetic thing. It's not really that important, but it does look better when you come to varnishing it. Obviously, if you're using MDF, it doesn't come into play, and if you're painting it, it doesn't obviously matter so much. But as a rule of thumb, run your panel grain vertically. So, when you cut all your panels, do a dry fit on the doors just to make sure there's not going to be any unforeseen problems down the road. Once you're happy everything fits correctly, then it's time for gluing up. Set your trestles or bench up so it's nice and flat and level. Set your clamps up perpendicular to one another, and then let's apply some glue. So, as you see, it's been glued up now. The last stage is to check underneath the door is flat and level to the clamp. Watch if one side isn't up compared to the other side, or you ended up with a twisted door. So all you do, visually look underneath. If it's down nice and tight, great. If it's not, just give it a tap with the hammer. It will bring it down. And then the final thing is, put your tape measure across the corners. In this particular case, that's 874 millimeters. And exactly the same on the other side. And if you've done that, you can leave your door to one side to glue up. 24 hours later, ready for a light sand and then for installation. Okay, so this is one of the two drawers I'm making for the cabinets. I got the material out at the same time as the door, so I cut this with a track saw. The groove was put in with the same router cutter. Now, when it comes to the drawers, to get the correct measurements for it, the depth is not such a problem, but the width, if you're going to use this kind of runner, you must allow for the thickness of the runner. It might sound silly and you might say, well, of course you do, but not everyone remembers it, and a lot of people will make mistakes if it's their first go. So, When you measure for your drawer the width, the drawer should be 25mm or 1 inch smaller than the opening, because these measure 12.5mm or half an inch in old money times 2, 25mm or 1 inch. So now for putting this together, I'm using 60mm screws. They should be sufficient, but because this is a workshop drawer and it's going to take a lot of abuse, I'm going to give it a few dabs of glue just for a bit more strength. So I'm going to put this together now and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so once you've got your drawer together, make sure, as usual, to measure across corners and make sure it's completely square. I'm 1mm out, that's acceptable. If perhaps you did have a problem, you can put a clamp across corners, give it a little squeeze until she goes back into square. It's as easy as that. And then just leave it to sit for the glue to go off and then move on to your next one. Right guys, now I'm going to show you how to fit your drawers. Now bear with me because the camera angle is going to be a bit awkward, but I'm going to do my best. So firstly, take your drawer runner apart. You do that by pressing this little lever and the front section will come off. I tend to screw these on about 35mm up from the bottom, 1.25 inches in that area. Flush to the front, nice and straight all the way down. 3 screws are sufficient, so do that on both sides. Then you have to fit the runners inside your cabinet. Now, this is really up to yourselves. There's no steadfast way of doing this. This is just a case of you figure out exactly how far you want to come down with your drawer. Cut yourself a template like I've done. Might be a little bit of trial and error, but it will save you messing up if you've got a template to work to. So basically, you push that to the top so you can't go wrong. Take your runner, and that will be just a mil or so back from the front face, like about there. And then just drill it in position. Like so. Again, sorry if you can't see everything, but it's a bit awkward to hold it and try and film it. But you get the idea. So that's the first runner in position. Then get all 3 screws in. Take your drawer, line up with each side. Takes a little bit just to work in and out. But once it's fully seated, as you can see, there you go. These will need wearing in, but they do work, as you can see. So now the doors are made, all we need to do is hinge them up. Now the way we go about that, take 2 hinges, place them on the door approximately where you think, and then you can figure out exactly what position you'd like them in. When you think you've got that position, in this particular case, I've looked at it, it's about 90mm in from either side. You can now drill the holes. Now, I purchased this trend jig. It's very good because all you do is mark a line where you want your hinges to be. There's a little, you can't see it, there's a little indent there. You put on the line and it's right every time. It's very good for people who don't want to have to set this up each time, and then that is spaced exactly right from the edge of the door. So let's do that now. On the line. As you can see, hinge fixed perfectly. Right, once you've screwed your 2 hinges on, next step is let's hang the doors. So, when you've got your doors hinged up, next thing is transferring the measurement from that point to the middle of the hinge onto your cabinet. Once you do it, square it across, top and bottom, and then here's another little jig I got off Amazon, which is really handy. I'll list this one and the trend jig at the bottom of the description. It's £2 or £3, but it gives you the exact measurements and the holes for the second part of the hinge. So you just literally pilot the holes and it's right every time. So let's draw those out. Take the second part of the hinge. This little bit goes towards the back for those of you who are uninitiated. Hold it in position with your thumb. Drive it home. Same at the bottom. Stick them in position, and the bottom one, adjust the height, so they need to be wound down a little bit, like so. And there you go, there's your door shut, just a few adjustments, and then we go from there. Okay, now everything's made, all the doors, all the drawers, there's only one thing left to do, and that's for me to fit them. So let's do that now. And there you have it. All fitted with handles, soft close hinges, soft close drawer runners. And I think it's fair to say it turned out pretty good. I hope this helps you moving forward if you decide to do shaker style doors. And as always, I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks. Bye bye.